Fat loss phase. So when we actually take a look at a fat loss phase, I guess the objective is to execute a brief fat loss phase before you enter an extended off season to reduce body fat while preserving muscle. And the duration for this typically lasts 4 to 8 weeks. But this can be very individual. It can extend upon 12 to 16 weeks, even 20 weeks plus. In terms of nutrition, calories are progressively decreased to establish a calorie deficit, promoting fat loss while maintaining muscle tissue. And when we actually take a look at training, we still want to maintain a high intensity and stimulus to preserve muscle mass despite being in a calorie deficit. There is a very common myth that you will lose muscle in a calorie deficit. That is if you're not eating protein and you're not resistance training. But of course, this could apply if you are dieting for an extended period of time, plus 6 months, or if your diet is super aggressive. Now, with cardio and NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis, that may be increased compared to your off-season levels to enhance overall calorie expenditure and to accelerate fat loss. But it's not the be-all or end-all. It simply comes down to your nutrition. And if you are someone that uses PEDs, you're an enhanced athlete or individual, adjustments to dosages may be considered to actually aid maintaining muscle tissue during the fat loss phase, ensuring optimal results. Now, let's say you are in the off season and you're thinking about doing a mini cut. You've put on a considerable amount of body fat. Now, muscle gain often coincides with fat gain. Okay, it's a risk to reward ratio. It does necessitate strategies like a mini cut to manage fat levels and optimize body composition according to your individual preferences. And a mini cut essentially serves to restore health variables affected by higher body fat levels, such as cholesterol, blood pressure, cardiovascular health. And additionally, when we actually reduce body fat through doing a mini cut, that can improve things like insulin sensitivity, reduce inflammation, and actually mitigate increased aromatization associated with high body fat levels. So sometimes taking a break from a high calorie intake phase, like a push phase or what we call phase 4 investment, can improve appetite, it can improve regulation, it can improve responsiveness to food, and it also offers psychological benefits by providing you with a mental reset and renewed motivation for subsequent training phases. Now, when we actually look at the fat loss phase and when to implement a mini cut, I guess the ideal time are at the end of a maintenance or a holding phase, which I call phase 3 focus, when body fat levels may have slightly increased. Or at the beginning of a muscle building phase, so the push-up phase, which we call phase 4 investment, to optimize body composition before focusing on gaining muscle. We want to avoid implementing a mini cut within 3 months after a competition, holiday prep, photo shoot prep, to actually allow the body to recover and to avoid disrupting the body's rebound phase after intense dieting, but also conditioning. Now, I would advise to avoid mini cuts during periods of high life stress or compromised recovery variables such as sleep, nutrition, PED usage. That's because optimal results require adequate recovery and stress management rather than just dropping food, because that's going to increase more stress within the body. We also want to refrain from starting a mini cut in the middle of a muscle building phase, the push-up phase, as it may compromise muscle retention and actually hinder progress. But again, consider implementing a mini cut prior to competition preparation, photo shoot preparation, holiday preparation to optimize the initial body composition and potentially reduce the intensity of duration of subsequent cutting phases during your prep. So this is what we're going to do with your fat loss phase breakdown. We also need to look at physique and expectations and assessments. So during your off season, we want to aim to maintain muscle mass or achieve recomposition if you are using performance enhancement drugs. Now, the ideal body fat range for males is typically between 8 to 12%, and we want to expect an initial fat loss rate of 1 to 1.5% per week, adjusting the approach as necessary based on progress. Weight fluctuations may occur if you are someone that uses PEDs due to water retention. That does necessitate adjustments based on subjective but also objective data, and ensure that the fat loss efforts do not compromise training performance, and monitor for any signs of issues such as menstrual changes or digestive disturbances. So I guess to summarize, set a target fat loss at around 0.5 to 1.5% of your body weight per week. 0.5 kilos to 1 kilo per week, which should be spot on, or 1 pound to 2 pounds for efficient progress towards reducing body fat. Nutrition for fat loss phase, very, very straightforward. We want to transition from a period of maintenance or a slight calorie surplus in food intake to prepare for a fat loss phase. And we want to ensure adequate intake of protein, carbohydrates, and fat to support the body during this transition. We also want to increase training volume to preserve lean tissue and boost overall calorie expenditure, which helps to facilitate the fat loss process. Now, to initiate fat loss effectively, we want to reduce your overall calorie intake by approximately 20 to 30%. Begin by eliminating off-season non-tracked meals. So if that's 1 meal off plan, or perhaps you've been having a few meals on the weekends, we want to remove cheat meals, remove any junk food to tighten up your dietary adherence. We also want to decrease your calories primarily from carbohydrates and or fats in meals, but not around your peri-workout window. So the pre, the intra, the post to begin with. We also want to consider incorporating additional cardio sessions to contribute towards that calorie deficit and actually enhance your fat loss efforts. But again, for individuals that are using PEDs, these substances can actually amplify the effects of fat loss, particularly on a smaller calorie deficit. So start the adjustment process by strategically reducing your calories for meals that are not closely aligned with training times, and ensure that nutrient timing supports performance and recovery goals. So this is essentially what it looks like. If you are someone that wants to cut, we want to aim for an energy intake or a calorie intake 20 to 30% below your maintenance to begin with. Want to aim for 1 gram of protein to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight per day, 0.3 to 0.7 grams of fat per pound of body weight per day, and then carbohydrates around 1 to 3 grams per pound of body weight per day. Now, the weekly change in terms of scale weight should be around 0.5 to 1.5% per week, and then weekly weight change advanced, it's still the same if you're a beginner, an intermediate, or advanced, still 0.5 to 1.5% per week. So again, looking at nutrition for your fat loss phase, alongside resistance training and cardio. When you're actually designing your resistance training program, we want to prioritize training within your recovery capacity. So using performance enhancement drugs, leveraging the support for higher training volumes, and ensuring volume is higher than during a holding phase, but less than peak push phase levels. So this should actually say resistance training, cardio, and NEAT for this section. However, we only want to utilize straight sets to manage fatigue, avoiding techniques like drop sets, rest pauses, and beyond failure sets. We also want to consider reintroducing the training day removed during the holding phase, such as transitioning from pull push off to pull push legs off, and maintain normal progression in both load and repetitions to continue advancing effectively. Now, when we actually take a look at cardio and NEAT, we want to adjust your cardio and non-exercise activity thermogenesis as needed to maintain a higher food intake while supporting fat loss. Now, initially, we want to focus on adjusting either food or intake of cardio, then monitor your body's response for optimal adjustments. So we could increase your step count, we could increase your overall energy expenditure, but we do want to limit direct cardio sessions to fewer than resistance training sessions per week, if possible, to prioritize as much muscle as we can. But again, this is very much individual. In terms of PED setup, if you are someone that's using anabolic androgenic steroids, so AAS, we want to transition from testosterone replacement therapy, so TRT, to a blast phase by adjusting dosage based on minimum needed for tissue maintenance or more aggressively for growth, taking into account previous cycles and progress. When we take a look at growth hormone at around 2 to 3 IUs or increase to 4 to 8 IUs per day, time 1 dosage of 2 to 1 U pre-fasted cardio for optimal effectiveness. And then when we look at insulin, avoid using insulin during this phase just to manage health and performance safely. Now, when we've got SERMs or aromatase inhibitors, don't use it during this phase. Health support compounds such as metformin, ARB, and telmisartan for health support is going to be very, very important for controlling your blood pressure. And fat loss agents, we want to reserve clenbuterol T3 for contest preparation, or if you are someone that's needing to use it. I personally like to use yohimbine. Yohimbine is a natural herb. It's not a PED, and it's more suited for natural athletes or individuals. So again, short duration, low dose clenbuterol may be considered, but if you are someone that's not using PEDs, then yohimbine is more favorable. So when we take a look at the fat loss decision tree, if fat loss is within the range of 0.5 to 1.5% weight loss per week, continue with your current plan. But if there is a fat loss stall, we want to assess adherence over the past 7 to 14 days. If adherence is high, then we maintain the plan and address any potential issues. But if there's no visual improvement in leanness or a decrease in scale and or caliper measurements, then we want to evaluate if training performance is improving or at least being maintained. If yes, ensure calorie intake is sufficient and expenditure is appropriate to allow for further deficit. If not, consider adjusting training volume downwards or ending the mini cut phase and transitioning into a holding phase. Now, we could assess other factors impacting your fat loss, such as digestion issues, changes in PEDs, your menstrual cycle, fluctuations in food volume, sleep quality, stress levels, water retention from training. If these factors are influencing fat loss, we want to address them accordingly without changing your current plan. If calorie intake is low and further decreases would fall below minimum targets, consider increasing energy expenditure through additional cardio sessions, providing they are not overly fatiguing. And again, avoid implementing PEDs and fat loss agents into a mini cut phase, reserving them for more intense preparation, such as a holiday prep, photo shoot prep, or even contest preparation. And this approach ensures these tools are used strategically and effectively. So how do we go about adjusting energy intake? Well, we want to manage your nutrition and training during phases like fat loss and mini cuts and adhere to these specific guidelines. Please do make one change at a time. Adjustment should react to observed changes rather than just preemptive after the initial setup. We want to maintain your performance. That's going to be so crucial, and avoid any drops in performance, since this phase is not akin to contest preparation, photo shoot preparation, holiday preparation, where extreme measures are taken. Calorie adjustment after the initial setup. After establishing a baseline calorie intake, we want to consider implementing a 10% decrease in total calorie intake. So again, reducing from 2,000 calories by 200. And then evaluate the results over the following week and adjust if necessary based towards your fat loss goal. In terms of macronutrient adjustment, we want to adjust carbohydrates and fats based on your individual goals. Protein remains the same, and we want to monitor closely to ensure muscle maintenance and sufficient energy levels while achieving fat loss objectives. But again, this approach ensures that nutritional adjustments support both performance and body composition goals effectively. When we actually take a look at protein, we want to consume 1 to 1.5 grams of protein per pound of body weight. And in the deficit, protein needs to be higher compared to a holding or even a push phase, where you could be prioritizing carbohydrate or even fat intake. With regards to hunger strategies, we want to opt for solid protein sources over liquid shakes to increase satiety. And we want to choose turkey and chicken over fish and egg whites for more substantial protein sources. When adjusting your carbohydrate and fat intake, carbohydrates should be relatively high to support your performance in the gym and also recovery. And we want to prioritize glucose for energy during that workout and also post-workout as well. We want to opt for carb sources with more fiber, like oats instead of cream of rice, to help manage hunger. But again, this is very individual. You could have cream of rice pre-workout because it's fast digesting, and then oats post-workout because it's slow digesting. However, I would actually opt for oats pre-workout just because you have sustained energy levels throughout. And then post-workout, you have the cream of rice because that is known to replenish your liver and your muscle glycogen very, very quickly. And then we want to increase your vegetable intake to further manage your hunger, roughly 200 to 250 grams per meal. Fats, we want to avoid excessive use of oils, so use things like Wankow. Choose fat sources with more fiber like avocado, nuts instead, and then manage fat intake to support energy and satiety without excess during this phase. So as a general guideline, we want to decrease carbs if carbs are greater than 1 gram per pound of body weight and fat is less than 0.3 to pound of body weight. And then decrease fats if carbohydrates are less than 1 gram per pound of body weight and fat is greater than 0.7 grams per pound of body weight. Or you can decrease your protein if protein is greater than 1.3 grams per pound of body weight. Carbohydrates are less than 1 gram per pound of body weight and fat is less than 0.3 grams per pound of body weight. Now, how do we go about adjusting energy expenditure? Well, the primary objective of cardio during a fat loss phase is to simply increase energy expenditure while minimizing its impact on training performance and recovery. So cardio modality should be selected in the following order of preference. Could be a treadmill, elliptical, bike, Stairmaster. This ranking actually prioritizes activities that typically involve greater energy expenditure and are more conducive to fat loss goals. When we take a look at timing, you can perform your cardio relatively far away from your training session to avoid affecting sleep duration as well. So you could do your cardio in the morning and then resistance train in the evening. Or you could do your cardio post-workout so it doesn't affect your performance. And around training, if necessary, perform cardio after training rather than before, unless it is in the morning. And adjustments, we want to modify duration, intensity and frequency of that cardio session if needed, if we're not seeing changes in scale weight or body composition. In terms of session management, we could split sessions longer than 20 to 30 minutes to manage fatigue and keep that intensity low. Low intensity steady state exercise to avoid excessive interference with your training. Other than looking at tools for cardio such as steps, jumping on the bike, elliptical, Stairmaster, we could look at option 2, which is a calorie adjustment. So we implement a 10% increase in total daily energy expenditure through cardio or additional steps. For a 2,000 calorie diet, that could mean adding 200 calories of cardio or 10 to 15 minutes of cardio and 2 to 4,000 steps per day. So how do we actually end the fat loss phase? Well, we need to evaluate whether current body composition is suitable for transitioning back to a push phase. Consider if the fat loss phase resembles a pre-contest diet in terms of intensity and focus, and then assess mental freshness and readiness for the next training phase to ensure optimal performance. When looking at a transition plan, we want to consider transitioning into a holding phase before initiating a push phase or competition preparation diet. And we want to plan a deload week during the holding phase to facilitate recovery and prepare for increased training intensity in the upcoming phase. Looking at training, we want to plan a deload during the holding phase and adjust training volume based on the upcoming phase. And when it's nutrition, we want to increase your food intake to maintenance levels when transitioning into the holding phase to support recovery and overall health. We could adjust macronutrient ratios as needed to align with goals and energy requirements during this phase. And with cardio, we want to reduce cardio sessions to off-season maintenance levels as you transition into the holding phase. If cardio volume was high during the fat loss phase, taper it down gradually over the next few weeks to prevent abrupt changes in your energy expenditure. And finally, if you are someone that uses PEDs in the fat loss phase, we want to begin with the blast, continue using performance enhancement drugs, and adjust the dosage to support ongoing growth and performance goals. If the fat loss phase marked the end of a cruise period, transition into a blast phase and incrementally increase PED usage as necessary to optimize your results. Hopefully, this comprehensive transition plan ensures a smooth shift between phases while maintaining progress and supporting long-term health and your performance goals.